Oh, look.
It's
Hello.
showtime. Bring it in. Our little Zoom from quarantine show.
Smiling.
Jarod Hector is the star. It's Friday show. David Thorpe is here. Wow. People are still coming in. Here we go. Look at this.
This is the best. This what happened last week, where a defensive player, an offensive receiver, chased down a defensive back running for a touchdown, a pick six,
like crazy fast. Yeah,
the fastest guy in the league. And so in this GIF we're watching, it's Biden's face on the defender running down Trump in the lead. It's amazing. I had to put that in there. It's so good.
Science and physics is stuff that we study, Henry, right? Like, it actually is amazing watching someone accelerate while someone else is decelerating, right? It's like, holy hell. Like, it's kind of like one of those last like evolutionary things when you watch like a huge animal going after prey. It's like, oh man.
And that receiver, I don't follow football. That dude is huge.
Yeah.
He's not some like skinny 100-yard sprinter. No. Oh my, he looks like a linebacker, except he plays I don't know what position he plays, but that dude is fast.
Yeah. So that's how that went. All right. Actually, we were joking around. These media companies are being really cautious about calling a presidential election. And I was like, wait, we have a media company. Like,
so what's your call? You're our leader. What are you calling?
I think Biden's going to win. I'm pretty sure.
You heard it here first. TrueHoop has called
I got it. Called it.
Joe Biden.
Does anyone, before we begin, have a favorite math guy at the chartboard at the Telestrator? Do you like Kornacki or the King from CNN better?
So I think they're both great, but if I'm going to give, only because it's sort of like he's been burned into my memory longer, I'm going to give John King Finals MVP.
I'm with you. All right, he's
like, I'll give it to him.
Here's my beef though.
So smooth.
So when we had partial results on election day, like they re-explained that suburban Cleveland County, I think it was about 800,000 times. I'm like, this just isn't good TV anymore. Like, I'm so tired of hearing about this stupid county. Do you guys have anything else you can tell us? Like, there
is a lot of repetitive stuff. I think Jarod made a point in our group chat to this morning that there is a ratings thing, and I forget that. I don't know how I forget it, because Jade Hoy reminds us all the time on Twitter. But there's not wrong. Like, I understand that part of it, but I think they're both fine. You're right. Kornacki, though.
I prefer him.
Math fast too.
Yeah.
He's all harried about it, whatever. King is just like smooth. It's like Jimmy Johnson's hair, smooth, and just really explaining.
That's my other issue with him. I'm not a big, his hair needs to move a little more. Like, it's a little helmety for my taste.
Well, Henry, who worked at ESPN for a long time, and you understand TV, there's a reason for that repetitiveness, right? Is because the idea, I'm assuming, is that maybe some people do, I don't know. You don't sit in and lock in from whatever time starts till 2 a.m., right? People come in at 20-minute bursts. So every 20 minutes, let's restart with the whole explanation story again.
That's definitely part of it. I also suspect that CNN has when they first started that John King touchscreen thing, it was the greatest innovation in election night coverage ever. And I think it's just it's like the Steph Curry 3. It's just like get the big machine. Like it's a very stupid approach to just like run the same play every time, but the same play, that's their favorite play, right? Like, I think that anytime they do the horseshoe desk or the reporter in the street, some executive is like, why are we doing our special thing, right? And it's just they need to think of more, we need a more varied diet, I think, right? Like, there's a lot going on in the country that night, and to just have this one county in Ohio, which ended up being irrelevant. And we just examined. Like, I was like, oh, whatever, guys. Like, come on.
The last thing I'll say on it is King in particular was so overwhelmingly certain to be sure to explain this is not predictive necessarily. It's possible. And if we handled COVID that way as a government, we'd be a lot safer. Like, he's being careful. He's being professional. And it's pain in the ass to listen to if you have it on a long time, so don't. But at least he's being careful and not, we're not talking to someone's elbow. This President of the United States, an election here. And I thought that cautiousness is wise. You can't accuse them of being willy-nilly and just, crazy. I appreciate that part of it.
It's true, but they have, now we're going to get sidelined on CNN technology, but they have very powerful visuals that make it appear things are done. States are red and blue from the first 5 minutes the polls are closed, right? And whereas that New York Times thing, which constantly shows how many votes aren't counted, I wish that everybody had it built into the visual where we are. Like he had to keep saying that, John King, because they didn't bake it in to the presentation at all, right? Like to me, like you want to use your big guns. The way we communicate as humans, much more powerful to see the state red. And like it was, then they had to go to the other TV to show which ones had actually been called, which was the only thing that mattered, right? Like in an election where all the votes come late. So anyway, I was a little like, you guys like winked at, you know, they kept telling us that we might have results tonight, right? But it's like, no, the right thing would have been to say, we're nowhere yet, right? Like all these states are going to change, you know, like, no, like we're not there yet, right? But instead they were like, dun, 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 dun.
It's this weird idea though, right, Henry, tapping into human psyche of us always wanting to know the future, which we know, like is not, we don't know what it is, but like, and even the smartest people, if you get them in a moment, if I can give you $10,000 to know the next 15 minutes, would you pay it? Yes. Like you just, people, it's this need to want to know what's going to happen. And when you're doing something like counting things, well, fuck, it's going to take some time before I'm done counting. So I don't know where it's going to end up. But I think that ambiguity is sort of like, that's part of the whole TV. That's how we sell TV.
Right. Okay,
game on.
It's Friday. Some things are sacred, and one of them is 9 by 90. She's had her clock ready for like half an hour while we're talking about CNN.
And she keeps pointing to it, like, "Come on, guys!"
I know, she's like, "Start the clock."
Well, as we know, TrueHoop has called it for President-elect Joe Biden. We seem to think that that's the direction that it's going in right now. And Judy's playing a bunch of things right now that we're seeing. Amin's Patino game, Hillary saying John Lewis should be proud, all sorts of interesting things. I want us to be happy in the moment. I'm putting on my Coach Thorpe hat. It's like the Eastern Conference Finals, right? Like Ernst Bolcher said, I'm going to allow my guys to enjoy this tonight. But come tomorrow, we got work to do. Right? And that's what I've been banging on the drum from the beginning. There is so much still going on. Prop 22, Affordable Care Act. Millions of Americans are still waking up going, how am I paying my mortgage? How am I affording this? People are still homeless. There is still a pandemic, for crying out loud. The gap between the trillionaires, yes, the new trillionaire class, which Jeff Bezos is the head of, and the capitalist machine is still growing at an exponential rate. Meanwhile, people down at the bottom getting poorer and poorer by the minute. We need to focus on this stuff, guys. As I've said, okay, a victory, great. This battle continues, and the fight is only getting more and more difficult. And it's not a 4-year Olympic sport. This isn't what being part of a democracy is. Democracy is demos and kratos. Demos, we the people get to decide how we are governed and ruled. And that is an everyday 24/7 act. And we need to remember that in spite of what we think is going to happen.
David, please also use Greek in your 90 seconds.
I only know the letters because of fraternity life. Sorry. So this all began, if indeed Biden wins today, we're seeing some pictures of some really important people on the video now. Stacey Abrams, of course, our friend Carl Sudler, Dr. Sudler, had a picture of her on Twitter, but it's like Stacey Abrams, just a picture of her. There's nothing else needs to be said. What she did in Georgia is just Herculean, and hopefully she's going to help America, not just Georgia, because we really need her. Obama, there's a reason why Obama was in, I think, Pennsylvania, then Georgia for a while. There's a reason for that. It's smart strategy. And of course, he's President Obama. But it all began with Jim Clyburn. There is no Joe Biden winning South Carolina, winning any primaries going forward if Clyburn doesn't support Biden in South Carolina. That is when all of this happened. And then Biden promised he could rebuild the blue line up north, which it appears that he did. Black voices matter. And they haven't always in this country. It's one of the many tragedies of what's happened in America. You guys know that I define leadership as breathing spirit in the hearts and minds of others. I can't think of 3 more inspirational leaders right now in America today than Jim Clyburn, Barack Obama, and Stacey Abrams. And there's millions of others that we don't give a voice to. And it's time we start one day at a time, because we'll all benefit from that. We just have to give them a chance and hear them out.
Remember Lloyd Pierce was on this show?
I thought about it all day yesterday.
And I don't, maybe we make too big of a deal of it. I don't know. But the fact is that we know that he led the Coaches Association to get early voting and election day voting in a lot of NBA arenas, and then the Hawks were one of the people that really pulled it off, and apparently reportedly about 40,000 votes in the Atlanta area took place in that facility, which Lloyd Pierce drove, and 40,000 votes in Georgia now. Like, woo! At the time we're recording this, I think that the Biden's lead is about 1,500. So Lloyd Pierce, this is I've always been disappointed that the NBA didn't have sort of more convincing and weighty political voices within the league. There have been like very vague things like vote, but this was a specific thing. And Lloyd Pierce did it, and I'm excited he's young. I'm excited to see what he does over the next few decades in the NBA.
I'm with you.
So, we talked about the battle continues. The other thing we need to look at and talk about is what's going on within the Democratic Party, right? You have Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the leadership coming out and saying things like, we gotta not use words like socialism, and we can't use things like free Medicare for all, and all these things, and dividing the party. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Congresswoman from New York, had a thread on Twitter today just about the misinformation being sown, right? That progressives are causing Democrats to not win certain seats. And, that's just frankly not true. AOC's point in her thread was that it's more about, if you look under the hood, not going out and canvassing within your particular district and talking and finding out from the people what actually matters, right? And it's a wonderful tweet by AOC. And again, it's not even so much if you agree with her politics 100% or anything like that. It's the way in which she approaches this. And AOC has a bright political future if she wants one, right? And what I mean by that is she may just come to a point and realize that I can affect the most change at the level that I'm at, right? Because the higher up you get in the ladder, the way the system is currently set up, you're going to have to give up some of your ideals along the way, right? Some of it gets either beaten out over you over time, and just the nature of this is how we do things here. But what we're hoping is that with time, Congresswoman Tlaib, Congresswoman Presley, Congresswoman Omar, Jamal Bowman, all the various progressives that are coming into the party can build that kind of coalition, and they then become the leadership instead of guys like Schumer, women like Nancy Pelosi, even people like Jim Clyburn, right? Even people like President Obama, who I enjoy very much, right? Moving away from this centrist idea to, look, we want people to have healthcare, the government can pay for it. We want less policing, we can remove money from that and give it to other things, right? And it's part of its messaging, sure, but also it's speaking directly to the people and allowing, when Black and brown people win you elections, as we're doing, as we're constantly doing, not ignoring them after we give you the big win, right? It's, no, midterms, here's why you need to hear what I'm saying and why we can't have infighting as a party. So that's just what I'd say.
Yeah, I'd like to say on the record that you owe me $5 that extra time you took, Jarod.
Well, I'm looking at the clock started at 20, and I was like, what the fuck?
It's okay. I'm kidding. Let's just call it $250, okay? So yesterday, some typical crazy Trump supporters did what they typically do in a crazy way, and they're threatening violence or whatever. And this is just what they do. And adults are in charge now, right? We have a process. As much as they hate it, we have a process. They're going to gesticulate and everything else and threaten and yell and scream. But adults are in charge. Mitch McConnell is going to talk to Joe Biden probably today. The transition team will start taking over. This is a process that's happened before. We've had lots of elections and lots of changes of power. And I think what's really important is those of us, not just in the media, but just in our communities, be the voices of reason, be rational. I'm on Facebook a lot this morning with people I grew up with who were unfortunately all bent out of shape over this and accusing all sorts of things. And I'm not trying to pour oil into the fire. I'm simply giving them information right from Ben Ginsburg, the longtime top lawyer for the Republican Party in election fraud, and just letting them read his words. Or you can actually listen to him because he also on video too. But he had an op-ed the other day that was really good. And if I'm the adult and they don't want to be, that's their choice. They don't want to be as mature as I'm going to be. But this is what we have to do. And then we have real problems to fix, which Jarod was just talking about. And we have COVID spiking like crazy. We need to let the adults have not been in charge for a long time. They're going to be in charge again, thank goodness. And we need to start that right now, being the reasonable, rational adults that we are.
So one of the things to worry about is legal challenges. And I've been listening to that Lawfare podcast. And one of the good news here is that it needs to be very, very close. This is a little, from one of the lawsuits in Philadelphia, basically the judge was like, I'm sorry, are you like, were there observers in the room? And they're like, yeah. It's like, then what are we fighting about here?
Exactly.
How much I like that. And then another potential legal shenanigan that could happen here is this faithless elector thing, which is where if you parse the small print, conceivably here and there, people from the Electoral College could go to DC and not vote for who the popular vote was for in their state. Pennsylvania has a Republican legislature. However, I love this. Back in the middle of October, the Pennsylvania Senate Majority Leader and House Majority Leader, both Republicans, wrote an op-ed saying, and I'm just going to quote from here, "To set the record once again, without question, the only and exclusive way that presidential electors can be chosen in Pennsylvania is by the popular vote." Thought that was nice to hear from the people who would actually have to rig it if it was going to be rigged. And then just one last little thing about lawyers and such. Jonathan Swan of Axios has this quote from a senior administration official saying, "When Bush had this issue, they tapped arguably the preeminent statesman of his generation, James Baker, to spearhead their legal and PR efforts to great effect. We rolled out Rudy Giuliani, Corey Lewandowski, and Pam Bondi. You can draw your own conclusions."
So we have basketball coming back sooner than we anticipate. We are a basketball show after all, so we'll talk about that. I have mixed feelings about it. Of course, happy because it's what we do, and I'm looking forward to covering it again and at some point going to games. But I'm also concerned because of the injury, right? And the injury potential and the short and truncated season. Mike Prada, who has his Substack article, had a really good one about Kevin Durant coming off of his Achilles injury. And the one thing I am looking forward to is the return of Kevin Durant. And I thought that Prada's article, using Breonna Stewart as an example and just talking about the way Durant moves and how his Achilles would be affected, I thought was really, really interesting. So I encourage people to read it. What I'll say is this: we have no idea what it is he's going to look like when we come back, but we need to sort of remember who this man was prior to getting injured. You know, we talk about Steph Curry revolutionizing the game. You know, Kevin Durant just as much revolutionized the game. There's only one of him, right? Yes, Dirk Nowitzki's also tall who shoots. No one moves as he does at his size, with the handle, being able to attack the rim, score from multiple levels. I mean, I've said it numerous times, when healthy, I think the best player in the world. If he comes back and he's 75 or 80% of that, that's gonna be pretty good. But you know, I encourage you all to go back and watch that old tape. Fire up your machines and check out how good this dude was at basketball.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, I remember very well. So to Jarod's point earlier about the fight going forward, right? We can enjoy moments here. I just want to remind everyone that all of this Trump nation began with birtherism, right? With abject racism. And something really interesting has happened. Biden has won an absolutely historic landslide election. When Reagan won in 80, I was 15 years old. He had about, I think it's going to be the exact same percentage of the popular vote as Biden is going to have. And Biden may even have more. And the fact that just Reagan won a lot more of the states, that's just because we have a ridiculous electoral college. But way less people voted. Just barely half the country voted then. And far more people voted now. That no president could come in with more of a movement and say against an incumbent than Biden has. And yet Republicans had a great night. It's one of the reasons why we know it's such a fraud to say that the election was a fraud. Republicans had a great night across the board, except for at the very top, because thankfully most Americans rejected this horrendous, joke of a man and criminal, corrupt man. And so now there is real work to do, which is why I talked about the adults before, is we've got this huge divide. Amazingly enough, those Republicans, the people who voted for Republican and not for Trump, also voted lots of legalized drugs and recreational drugs and mushrooms and whatever. Like, what's going on? There is an interesting swirl going on here. And now we have the adults just need to just work it through. And then we have to be sharp. Like we need to stay sharp and push our agenda the way we want to.
Jarod, you can take that $2.50 that you're going to give David and just give it right to me.
I only want like a couple of seconds.
That's the rules, man. I'm sorry, I don't make them. All right, so I have a little bit of a Joe Biden, to me, had like what's proved to be, I think, an absolutely stunningly brilliant political moment that just tore my heart out a little bit, which was on the screen now, which is when he said in the first debate, I'm totally opposed to defunding police officers. They need more assistance. Kyle Sudler had been on this show like the week before. We know the importance of this, but if you think about how Trump motivates voters, Joe Biden did this political tactic and just tore the heart out of Trump's argument that he was going to be soft on crime and we're going to have like race riots every day, right? They were going to make Joe Biden, we're going to spend the last month of the campaign talking about Joe Biden wanting to do away with the police, which would have motivated Trump-leaning voters, right? And Joe Biden just did away with that. And then I don't know if you guys saw this morning, there's so much news, but this guy is like story number 7 million like this, but there's a internal investigation found that I forget his actual title, but the anti-harassment official of the NYPD was posting just allegedly under a fake name, Clouseau, posting just the most incredibly racist stuff, and is probably going to lose his job because of it. I feel like, okay, so I don't want to be a politician. I'm glad I'm not. Joe Biden made this choice, but like, what are we doing about this? What are we going to do about this? Like, then it's, what's the plan?
I have an idea. If he doesn't maybe know Dr. Sudler, but he knows who Stacey Abrams is, and we all have been talking at my group of friends about what position should Abrams be given. Clearly, it should be something of absolute importance. And people are saying Attorney General. Quite frankly, she should take whatever she wants to take and just literally be offered the buffet. Stacey, you got first dibs. But for me, I don't know what the best chief of staff should be able to do, but I want her in Biden's ear all the time. And I would love for someone like her to be able to say to him, this is why you said what you said to win the election, but now let's talk how to make the country better. I would trust her totally to guide him, because I don't think he really understands what people like we do, because of people like Dr. Sudler understand. So I would love for her to influence.
I think this is a 200-year-old issue, right? Like, I don't think it's novel to a longtime U.S. senator, right? I think it's just
what don't you think is novel? You think he really thinks that we should be funding police less and just said what he said to win votes?
No, I think that he's in a box now, right? Jarod way in here, but to me, we know this systemic organization here and why the police are funded the way they're funded, and either you're going to tackle that aggressively, which will mean a bunch of heads are going to roll, right? A bunch of different people in charge, in a way that might be so profoundly hard to change that you can't do it without threatening the entire budget, right? Or we're going to modify a little bit, and then we're keeping the slave catcher organization together, right? Like, those are kinds of the choices, right? And
but I don't think he sees it that way, and I think he needs to see it.
Disagree.
I know that you. I don't think he really understands it. I really don't.
No, Coach. Joe Biden is how long has he been in politics?
Yeah, all the years.
100 years. He is GOP light. Like that is what he is. He is Republican light. So he already has money earmarked and assigned for more diversity, training, and inclusion stuff, which we know does not work. He is an establishment Democrat. His goal is to keep status quo as it is, right? It'll be different because he's not going to yell Mexicans or rapists. Right. He's not going to do any of that stuff because, that doesn't play well. But he's going to do the same thing because that's what works for the establishment Democrats and for the ruling class, right? Like, that's why I was talking about the capitalist machine, where this all comes back to, right? It's the ruling class, Wall Street, and those people. They don't want police defunded. None of that stuff. So that's staying exactly what it is. They're going to move a couple of things here and there to make it look like, all right, we're putting some money towards this. We're going to do X, Y, Z, but they're not, because he's not a progressive thinker in that way. That's not how he's built his entire career. That's why there's so much infighting, right? And again, it's going to be good for now until January 20th. The minute January 20th rolls around, you're going to see it. The squad and the people who are progressive is that side of the way you're going to want to start doing things. Pelosi and Schumer, like, nope, we're not doing that. And it's going to be the same situation that we're in. And it's until the party leadership changes to that side and they get those type of people in higher positions, then we'll see actual, and again, messaging matters. We'll use different things instead of defund police because for whatever reason, that doesn't play well. Fine. Say it differently, right? That doesn't mean there's going to be no police on the street. Of course there's going to be police, just not in the way that it currently is because it doesn't need to be that way. But that's a very nuanced and tactical thing that Biden, that's not, no, that ain't him. And that, sadly enough, for you to know, that ain't Kamala Harris either, right? That she's also the same way. That's not them.
It's to me, like only a small part of what you get to do as a politician, or let's say an NBA GM, right, is what you think will work best, right? You have a certain amount of freedom to actually do the job, right? And you need to have a lot of keeping the job, right? I think this is where American politics, I think maybe this is what I should say it better this way, David, like, it's since Nixon's Southern strategy and beyond, like, it's very clear that the flaw of American democracy is that things that look good for non-white people don't go very far, right?
Correct.
There just aren't enough votes for it, right? So like, I don't think, like, this is very sophisticated in politics, right? We know this, you have to have a strategy to win the electoral votes, and you just can't do it without a certain amount of pandering to white people, to sort of racist white people, right? So anyway, not to get all, but I think this is where, like, he kind of picked a side on this issue there, right? Which was like, I'm going to do what will look okay in the debate, right? And it worked. The bummer is it worked. So like, I don't think he will change that right away. That doesn't seem to make any sense to me at all, that he would just suddenly like, well, we're tossing that out to do stuff that will totally not get me reelected. Like, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like Jarod said, we're better off, period, just not having this crazy person in the White House.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we all agree on that. But this is where the fight has to happen. This goes back to Jarod's first entry today. And that's why I want someone like Stacey in his ear. We may disagree a little bit on just what Biden really understands, because I don't think he even wants to entertain it because he knows he can't win with it. But I want Stacey just pounding. And to Jarod's point about Kamala, because I think Biden's a one-term president probably, she has no shot to win. If you just look at some of the things already coming out about it from Democrats who support her, including James Carville, who is not my favorite person in the world, but he was flat out saying like she's going to have a very tough time. The only way to get her to come around, to give her a chance anyway, because I support her, would be to show kind of growth. Let's show progress over 4 years. And I think someone like Stacey can challenge both of them to say, if you don't, this is gone in 4 years. We see the Republicans gained. How is that possible? That I think every Republican representative won. I think every Republican representative won their election. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Every one of them. Even though they supported this idiot.
They gained House seats. And Coach, to your point, a brown woman with the name Kamala, that is not going to work so well. Like that. Unless something really shakes up the system, and that's why I want Stacey to be. Unless the fabric of this country in the next 4 years changes dramatically.
But they said that about Barack too. I was around when they said about Barack, right? And Barack Hussein. Right, he had two things going against him, right?
Christ, and look what they did to that man, right?
Yeah, I know, but they elected him twice, right?
The position here is that what we're ultimately talking about is it's the thing that is this country's original sin and problem. It's race issue, right? That is this country's problem and will forever be its problem, right? Because it is something that we have never owned up to as an entire country and made ways in which we can eradicate it. And I mean, it infiltrates literally everything. I was reading something by a Princeton scholar about how race impacts technology and the way you use algorithms and things like that, right? And
I talked about last week. Yeah.
You've seen stuff.
Incredible.
It's fucking everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere. Like you can't escape it. It literally surrounds and engulfs us. And when you say things like, economic anxiety and whatever. And, when we're joking about, where you guys are right now, Henry and Judy, like, yeah, the further you move away from cities, the appeal is, well, less Black and brown people, right? That is the big drawing point, right? For a lot of people, less people that don't look like me live around here. So it's just everywhere. And until we get to a point where that isn't an issue, which, I mean, it sounds very Pollyanna-ish, we are going to be who and where we are.
I do think there's in addition to everything that's always been racist about America, we're also in a moment where a lot of white people are like, oh my gosh, I have friends in a cult. Like, in addition to that, on top of everything else, people need to deprogram dad, right? So there's a sort of, baked in racism that we've talked about many times on this show, and I'm proud that we do. But there's also this kind of Fox News, Breitbart, Trump, particular thing that's been fomented right now, which is not necessarily a constant in America, right? Not that we couldn't find it, but we don't have to have it, right? We might not be able to change everything, but I think we can, now we all know people who are 20, 30 years into being brainwashed, intentionally brainwashed. And propaganda is just super effective. Televised propaganda works. And it works on a whole bunch of Americans right now. That's a new thing that I feel I don't know what the solution is. Actually, as I was joking before, so this guy, Jay Van Bavel, I mentioned sometimes he's an NYU psychology professor and researcher and did a lot of important work. He did some research that basically if you're talking to someone who's, extreme right, what actually works to build a bridge to them is to listen, to be compassionate, to honor their suffering, to ask questions, all these things that my wife is really good at. And I was just realizing today, I'm if Trump's not president anymore, maybe now I can be better at that. It's just too scary and angry before, but now it's okay, what's your thing? Okay, go on. Let me ask a follow-up question. Now maybe I could do that, but I had a hard time with it before.
You mentioned it, Henry, with Nixon, and Coach, you mentioned it with Reagan, right? So just in general, right? There are a lot of conservative people live in this country, right? A lot. And just by nature, the older you get, right, you tend to skew more conservative once you have things to protect, right? A home, a family, right? So those things become very important to you. And part of, and it started with Nixon, and obviously it's continued through the GOP, is, okay, if I tell you something is coming to take away your home, hurt your children, right? You're going to do whatever is necessary in your power to stop that from happening. That is a reasonable thing to do as a reasonable thing.
Unless it's wearing a mask.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute, right? So there are all these boogeymen that you create around that, right? It's drugs, it's Black and brown people, it's this, it's that, it's all these things that you continue to do that cause you, right, to skew and steer this way, right? And lean towards that side of the aisle. And okay, presidentially, we may do well. And, 7 out of the last 8, the Democratic candidates won the popular vote, all that. But look at that House and look at that Senate, right? People inevitably go back in those midterms and they're like, no. The boogeyman's coming. I got to save myself from from this mythical boogeyman who's coming to take away everything you hold dear. But that works, right? Because if I told you, Henry, and told you, Coach, someone is coming to take your wife, your children, your house, and your kids, you guys, as rightfully so, would fight to the hill to stop that from happening. Well, I've just told you, they're coming. They're coming.
But in the midterm zone 18, we're very positive for Democrats. And which normally happens, there's normally a zig and a zag, right, to who the president was elected 2 years prior. This goes to the question I was asking you guys before we came on air. What is the psychology behind the divide between how cities are voting across America? I'm sure you've seen these really cool art charts of the country red and blue and based on county voting, which is hugely red. And then when they shrink that out and just do the little dots of where the people live, it's mostly overwhelmingly blue, right? And so why such a difference? And I think what Jarod said is right. I think people are overwhelmingly conservative outside the cities. It's easier just to, this is who I am, this is what I've always done. I've liked black coffee and I'm just drinking my coffee black, right? This is my breakfast and across the board. And whereas people live in the cities.
Wait, is someone threatening our coffee?
No, yeah.
Okay.
Only tea.
Got serious for the next second.
In the cities where you just see, and in the rural parts, everyone else is the same way. In the cities, you can't help but see Nicaraguan restaurants and Costa Rica and this and Ecuador, whatever. And they're just like Henry always says, we're all about the same that way. If you just have to rub elbows with them, right? You have to break bread with them. You have to coach Little League with them, as I've done for many years, whatever. And then you start realizing, okay, who I thought I was based on a bunch of stuff I didn't understand. And that's what isn't happening outside the cities, in my opinion, where you can just be who you've always been and you take pride in that. The farmers who've always treated their land the same. And then I told you guys about the New York guy. I said, well, no, that you have this kind of soil, you should try this. Well, who the fuck are you to tell me how to do it? Oh, it worked. And that made them mad. And they voted for Trump. Why didn't anyone tell us this the last 30 years when we've barely been able to grow 8 potatoes in our land or whatever, This is what I think anyway, as to why there's such a divide.
I mean, I bring it back to this, but it's so much of this is we have to go and talk and see and see from these people. And then you make sort of predictions, or you extrapolate out based on your encounters with people. And again, I go back to that video I shared weeks back with that woman who was opposed for Section 8 housing in her neighborhood, right? Well, I just don't want nomadic people here. And all of these ways she's contorting what she wants to say, right? That's how so many people feel, right? Because it's this belief that there's something other, there's an otherness about them that I don't want, right? Whatever that otherness is. It ain't how me and this other person is. So we just want people that are like this, not people that are like that. And sometimes it's as simple as that. It's often as simple as that little thing. I don't want it to be like this because of this. It's otherness, right? And that's what we built this entire country on. I mean, Isabel Wilkerson's fantastic book, Caste, is about this, right? Her other book, The Warmth of Other Suns, right? Which is a phenomenal book about race in America, right? That's what this is. We created ourselves based on this awful, awful thing. And now we're acting surprised about, well, why is it like this? Well, this is why it's like it, right? This thing.
But I think, so yeah, there's, I think a little bit of my, I have a beloved, much older family member who at our wedding danced with a friend of mine all night. High the night of her life. And she's like, we got to find him a lovely young lady. And it's well, he's not going to want a lovely young lady because he's gay. And she was just kind of she'd probably met 1,000 gay people in her life. Yeah. But this was, and for a year, she would call and ask about him and wonder how he was doing and kind of talk the talk a little bit of trying to make him less gay, right? Do you think we could, yeah. But, so before that first experience, she's got no shot at handling this well, right? Now she's had one experience, right? Once you get to 50, you just, the wall comes down a little bit, right? In many cases, right? It's not she's in the wrong. It's an unpleasant process. I'm sure hurt feelings with the way she talks about these things in her life, but nevertheless, that's how it works. It's you kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of wear down. To me, I grew up in the whitest state in the union and moved to New York City in 91. And I had a big, you just don't get to have preconceived notions in 1991 Manhattan. You just, in the East Village, you just everybody right. Defies every expectation. There's no rule that carries through anything, right? You just learn. You just kind of so I feel America is in a time now where a lot of people just lived on a farm, quite literally, and didn't have a lot of diverse experiences, and therefore are at step 1, right? Right. Step 1, you're very easily manipulated. Someone on your TV might say this or that thing is bad or scary, and you'd have no firsthand experience to counteract it, right? So I think there's so much of America is just virulently, terrible, violently racist. That's real. There's also some people who just don't know shit. They're just oh, I'll believe this bad. I'll believe Steve Bannon on this topic, right?
It plays on fear. Fear is real. That's what I want to be clear about. If you are afraid that your kids in your home, that's a real fear to have. I'm not telling you that's not real. I'm telling the people who are sowing it based on what they're doing, that is the problem, right? Making up this boogeyman, that's the issue. And in your inability, because you don't have the experience with it, as you mentioned, because you don't know any Muslims or whatever, then you're like, yeah, it must be. But that's how the psychology works. And he's brilliant at it. They're brilliant.
You mentioned the book Case. I texted my wife yesterday because I don't know how to use our library system here. We have this enormous library close to our house, and she does our library books for us because I'm banned from mostly buying books because she's just sick of all the books we have. And so I said, "Where are we at with that? Like, I'm ready to read it now, basically." And she sent me the update. We're 122nd in line for 33 books available at our local library. And so as this was during the day yesterday, as I'm watching John King going through all these rural voters in Georgia and Pennsylvania that are 85% Trump, I thought to myself, is there even one book available at any of their libraries there? And is it just collecting dust, right? That particular book. And so this is just when you said that, I thought of that. I agree with what you're saying. This is where we're failing, right? Our cities are getting it. Like, that American experience is getting it. Lots of people are reading that book, Jarod. It's becoming a very popular book, as it should be. I can't wait to read it. When 120 other people get done with it, I'll read it in my local area. But
Florida needs more books.
yeah, 33 isn't enough, apparently. But this is how we change things, and it goes. I don't want to get into a whole talk on education, but I'm really proud, at least for our children. I don't have such a political household, because we don't ever argue. My wife and I agree with everything really politically together. So there's no argument. But yet my son, I called him yesterday. I'm like, Max, you think you know what's going on? He's like, yeah, I know what's going on. And of course, I'm the jackass that I'm like, all right, son, what do you think's really happening? He gave me a beautiful 5-minute speech, and I'm like, fucker knows what's going on. Then I said, why are you studying?
Good one. Yeah,
not studying the election. And my daughter is coming in to have lunch with me today. I think it's a celebration. She knows I'm alone this weekend. She wants to celebrate. Like, she's fired up, and her friends are. And they're not asking of some kids. Maybe Henry's daughter is more politically aware than my kids are, but they're aware enough to know what's fucked up and what should be. And they're open to listening. And I'm not ever telling them to do what I told them, what I do. Figure it out. Get the facts. Decide what you think is best, and let's debate. This is how you normally have to learn. And if that's happening in those areas, the rural areas, we'll all be better off for it, because we will all be better off when everyone feels like they're being heard.
You know, I want to give you guys, sorry, Henry, really quick.
No, go ahead.
Anecdotal story. So early in my professional career, right after college, I worked in finance, right? And in sales. And, you know, you have these like big company-wide meetings. I work for a huge company, New York Life Insurance and New York Life Insurance and Investments.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so boring.
I mean, yes, very boring. But we have these big, like, huge, like, you know, when you hit to a certain level and you get to fly here and do all that shit, right? So we're at, you know, one of these conferences for, like, you know, top whatevers, and you're meeting people like you, right? Like, you do your job in other parts of the country. And I remember spending a good deal of time with a bunch of people from, like, Montana and a lot of those states. And when they hear you're from New York, it is always this like fascinating and this like, wow, oh my God. And I remember talking to one of the guys about it. He's like, when you walk around there, man, like, is it safe? And I'm like, what do you mean? Is it safe? Yes. I'm like, what do you think happens in New York? Like, I don't know. Like, aren't there just people with, like, guns? I'm like, and thinking where you live, there's
no guns.
Like,
yeah.
Guns here. Like, that's not, you can't do that. Like, and because in his mindset, right, he wakes up in the morning, goes out for his day and sees his clients or whatever. He leaves his front door wide open, unlocked, and all of these things that like give him a sense of, you don't do that. You don't unlock, you don't leave your door unlocked in New York. I'm like, oh, because the sheer volume of people, I'm like, yeah, we can't. But that doesn't mean that it's this crazy place where these weird things happen. But it was just interesting talking to him and like getting, and again, not just him, a bunch of other people from surrounding areas in Missouri and wherever. It's the same idea of like, oh, New York, is it scary? And like we were at this conference, it was in Dallas, which, you know, a city, but like not, it ain't New York. So one night we're like, hey, let's go out. I'm like, guys, let's go downtown Dallas. I know a couple of the spots, whatever. No, we think we're gonna go to a baseball game. It might be too scary in Dallas. And I'm just like, what is happening? But that's the thing though, right? Like, these people have legitimate fears about these unknown areas, right? Like, and when you just see the news, that propaganda that tells you, look, AK-47s and black and brown people who shoot and kill, that's what you think it is if you've never been there. And they have kids who think the same thing and they never go there, and it just continues on and on and on and on.
And maybe I'm too optimistic, but like I genuinely think that like lived experience, just life, like does tend to teach you that like it's not quite like that, right? Like you can actually get off a plane in New York and go to where you want to go, and it's fine.
You won't get shot, I promise. Like,
fine. It's gonna be fine. Yeah.
Hey, Henry, you put a note in your in our document. I loved what you put. Let me find it. Kind of the stodgy bureaucrats. I'll let you talk about it. That's a good line.
Yeah, actually, and Jarod touched a little bit on something to do with this too, where AOC went in a little bit on like, hey, let's look at these campaigns that failed, and she's like they were incompetent, right?
Lazy.
Yeah, so to me, like, okay, the day that Trump was elected, I felt deep in my soul, I was like, this is a failure of decency, right? Like I hope the lesson we take from this is that we need to be decent. Decency is something that America, I hope, values, and that will be the reason he's kicked out. I don't know that that's what happened. I think that's part of it, but I think competence is a giant reason why Trump is losing this election, right? And what works. And so I think of that with the people who keep appearing on CNN about the recount and how it works. Like, I wouldn't like to work at a big company like New York Life, Jarod. I'm impressed you could pull it off. Like, it's full of, like, this character, right? Who's just like, we're not going to rush. We've got a lot of people. It goes to this committee, and then it goes to that committee, and then it gets scanned, and then it gets reported, and then it gets tabulated. And then like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad to work at a small, nimble place where we can just do stuff, right? But this is a big country, and we have lots of votes to count, and that bureaucracy is exactly how you do it, right? I also think about, I don't know if you guys remember, there was a little viral clip of the Army general who came to New York and set up the hospital in the Javits Center.
Yeah.
In the early days of the pandemic. And we're all like swimming in all these studies, and he was like, we're gonna need fresh air, circulation, we're doing this, blah, blah, we can set it up in 2 days, blah, blah. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, how does he know that that's what we need? And it turns out he was exactly right then. He was right in March. The air was exactly the thing. And somehow he knew, right? I'm like, goddamn bureaucrats, you guys are amazing. Like, this is so good. And I'm so impressed. Like,
I thought about this, and I may have put that in our group text, just on a similar subject. I cannot stand Rick Santorum, and as much as I like John King, I really can't watch CNN because of him. Except he said the single smartest thing I've heard in the last 3 days. He really did. It's a shock, I know. But he said that one of the other panels said something about more of a centralized election system. And he said, oh, no, that's the worst way to make sure you don't have a fraudulent election, is have everything in one place where it can be, obviously corrupted and everything is affected. We have got how many counties in just my state, 100 some odd counties. We're so not just diverse, but the way we do the process of collecting votes, whatever, is so unique to that area. Not even Putin can get into any one area and affect all of them because they don't even talk to each other. They all do it differently. That sausage making process is actually a really good process. So the same thing with the bureaucrats. And we saw some of them being talked during the impeachment. These were lifelong diplomats, I call them, right? Well, they were diplomats, but they're called whatever by the other side. This is all they do. And it's a thankless job. It doesn't make them a bunch of money, and you're not a hero, but you really learn that whatever tradecraft you're doing, it's actually one of the things that makes our country great. You want to make it more like Russia? Have everyone go vote to one place. That's why Putin keeps winning with 99% of the election.
I get what you're saying. I hear you, but like, now you have the gurus, military programmers. All they have to defeat is Miami's like IT guy. You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't you like a more sophisticated opponent than that, right? Like, it may well be that they did hack the votes in this election, and it may be that it almost worked, right? So to me, like, I feel like you can leave local control of, like, who owns the machine, which software do they use, while organizing like protocols, right? So you could have, for instance, it doesn't have to be decided in every local jurisdiction. Do you start counting mail-in ballots the day of? Or, they can just make a federal rule about that, right?
I agree with that.
People controlling, et cetera. So to me, like, what type of server do you use and what kind of safety levels does it have? Blah, blah. Like that might be a good guideline from the federal government, right?
I agree with that too.
Because I think it is. I think our current system is completely hackable, like entirely, right? Like we already know they infiltrated every machine in 2016, right? That was internet connected. It's not working. To me, it's not working. To me, like I think you probably do want like.
Wait, so you think there were elections that were hacked in 2016?
No, I know that the GRU was on those servers. Like they don't think that they changed. Yeah. So like, well, it's not safe. It's already not safe, right? It's not a good system, right? And that you could strategically pick off a few counties here and there until it's a state.
Right. In Pennsylvania, they use paper ballots. First time in 20 years.
Yeah.
There's
like people who actually know about elections have strong ideas about how to make them much safer than ours, right? Like paper backup, I think, is the way, right? This is what I think they usually recognize is the best is like you vote digitally somehow, but then you have a paper backup and it's auditable.
Right.
Anyway.
But I like that it's just not all one central place. I like that there's, you can affect the county, but it's still just one county. And even if it's an important county, it'd be better than a whole state. Like there's always going to be bad people. There's always
you only have to hack whether the Latino vote in Miami-Dade and you got Florida.
Yeah, but he still lost the election. Like that's what I'm saying. We'd rather get the whole South.
No, but the team that could do Miami-Dade can add a couple more. They just didn't get enough, right? Like it just like they were like.
But that's part of the process. I would argue is it makes it hard to get more than one.
Well, if not if they've already been on all those servers, like they're in. Like, do you know what I mean? Like the hackable part has already been proven that it doesn't work this way. Anyway, I don't like to me like it has a theoretical underpinning that like all these different systems would make it impossible to hack, except that they got into all of them.
Would you guys move just straight up to a popular vote?
Oh, hell yeah.
Does anyone even understand? Like, told us in U.S. history class, like, oh, you can't have the popular vote because then like Elvis would be elected and somehow we need to protect against that. I'm like, is that even a real argument?
I can't imagine it is. Like,
no, the argument is that the smaller states will get screwed, but I just want someone on Biden's side when they propose this, if they do, make a list of all the states that both presidential candidates have visited in this election and the last 10. And tell me how many ones went to Arkansas, not including the Clinton years. How many went to Wyoming? How many went to Montana, Idaho? It already is happening. They're not going to those places anyway. Even Trump said when he went to Erie, Pennsylvania, literally, by the way, he's losing Erie. Last time I looked anyway, he said, I'm only here, because of the election. I wouldn't be coming here. And they cheered for him. These are people from Erie. Like they're never going back there if it wasn't for this. So I think that I don't understand. I know why the Electoral College was made. It's long past its time. It should just be pure popular vote for sure.
Abolished. So I'm sure at some point our good friend of the show, Amin El-Hassan, will be doing Patino game. Just anybody who's out there.
I never understood that, by the way. I always saw them do it. I just never understood. I don't.
So he created this because remember when Patino was coach of the Boston Celtics and they were, struggling and having their issues and they were calling for his job. And he had his press conference. He said, guys, Larry Bird ain't walking through that door.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Walking through that, right? All the old greats.
Yeah.
And so, Amin loves it. So anytime a team loses in the playoffs, it's you go back and you list all the players, that's how you play a Patino game.
Right. Caleb's doing it already. There you go.
But go back to like the Whig Party, go back to those guys who are really against abolition. Like throw those names out there because he hates when you do the stuff that everybody knows. Everyone's gonna go Barack Obama. No, that's not funny. Like,
wait, you're coaching up the Patino game right now, Jarod? That's what you're doing?
A little bit of if they want to, if they want to be a little funny. You
got to be clever. You got to be clever, is what you're saying.
I like
clever with it.
I like it.
I don't think I'll be playing that game.
I had this is just a little funny thought that occurred to me, but I was like, in the last month, Donald Trump, who I don't follow on Twitter, but just from seeing people retweet stuff, has been saying constantly that the vaccines are just like probably October, maybe definitely November. And it was like, is that a cheap election ploy or are we actually about to get vaccines? Right. And like, now I'm like, well, the election has passed and I think he hasn't mentioned vaccines at all.
I do think though, what Dr. Mina first talked about months ago, I think that's much more likely to come to fruition once Biden's in office. Just a lot more rapid tests. I know that I've talked to some athletes in college who have been told that once the season starts, they're going to be testing multiple times a week, like college basketball, and they're going to be doing the saliva tests. And I think that we're going to start seeing that more and more as of course we should. And I know we could talk about COVID in the last few minutes, but Jarod mentioned the NBA season returning. It was a fast off season. Guys got to show up soon to camp.
I mean, so the Heat and the Lakers finished play what, 3 weeks ago?
Maybe a month ago.
Something like that. Yeah.
No, you're not wrong. 3.5 weeks ago. Yeah. Early October.
I mean, okay. And so they had the rest of November, and then December 1, they got to be geared up. Like we talk about this all the time. Like when we watch about soccer, there's a reason why high level soccer in Europe, they play twice a week. Like you can't, because your body cannot handle doing that multiple times. This is just crazy to me.
Butler, LeBron, Davis in particular should not be playing in December.
Like Jimmy, good God, that guy's
they should be assistant coaches. Get a nice workout in, get a lot of recovery time in, show up. You probably need to be there. But practices are voluntary, games are mandatory. Cheer on the bench. You're not dressing like until we go 10 games below 500. You're not dressing or something like that. I'm kidding, but they need to be smart with those guys. Otherwise, we're going to have a really bad playoff. But the truth is, most teams have been. I've talked to some players who are dying, like they want to go right now. Screw Thanksgiving. They are dying to do what they've always done. Most teams have been done for that long, and most players, obviously. And I'm happy. I'm a basketball coach who covers the NBA. I'm happy to watch basketball.
For work, I'm excited. I mean, it looks like there's going to be all types of excitement in Brooklyn, Henry. I think I might just pitch a tent. And
you might have two teams, right? You have two teams coming.
Yeah.
Well, not Brooklyn, because I think they're going to Newark, aren't they, Henry?
Like Newark for Toronto. I think
the Raptors. You mean?
Yeah. So, I've read about fans being allowed to rent the luxury suites. Have you seen this?
Yeah, luxury suites are what they're going to use. Yeah,
that's interesting. No one in the stadium, except for the suites.
And I wonder how they're going to do media. I imagine it's going to be TV partners first, Henry, like it was for the bubble, and then I guess that then based on your outlet, like then you get like preferential stack is what I would imagine. I don't know.
They got to figure it out fast.
I know that the media won't be the priority, Trot. That's right now.
That's true.
It will not be a priority. I love your idea though about selling the one seat to fucking rich people.
It's not really my idea. Like I stole it from like a really smart guy who doesn't want credit for it. But like for real, like I'm pretty sure it took me a decade of like learning about this. But like if you're J.R. Smith and you're out of a job, like if you go sit in the 10th row, you're still out of a job. But if you sit in the front row, then ABC comes over and you are 10 times more likely to get a job. So sitting courtside in a national televised game is a strategy people use all the time to get media attention on themselves, right? So I think if you imagine if Mark Cuban didn't secure the Mavericks when they were for sale, and he was just a billionaire who wanted to be noticed, right? Do you know how much Mark would pay to sit court to be the only seat at a Lakers game? I'm proposing that for COVID reasons, they just have like
such a smart
room on the sideline. I think you might pay more than what the Lakers get from selling 20,000 seats. Like,
that is so incredible. Do I know the person who came up with this?
Yes.
I thought, what a genius idea.
And he's been shopping this behind the scenes of the NBA for years. And like his feedback is that everybody thinks you'd make more money from selling one ticket than from selling 20,000 tickets. Because like this person becomes like a star. And so, it's got a lot of downside, and it's like what the message sends people about billionaires. But I think that for real, like if you're just trying to replace that in arena revenue, I think that luxury suites doesn't get any of this value, right? Nobody's on TV in a luxury suite. But if there's just courtside, just one person, some Mark Cuban figure, or maybe Mark Cuban plus one, I think he would pay more than $3 million for that.
Amazing idea.
You said Cuban, Henry. It's probably Jimmy Goldstein plus two, like, right? If you catch my drift.
When I was running my workouts at IMG, long before that, I was asked to come down there and open a basketball thing there when it was just Nick Bollettieri's tennis academy, because I was the only one doing player development then. So I go down there, it's just an hour and a half drive, and I go into Bollettieri's, basically it's a gym, it's indoor tennis courts, and I see all the different tennis brands on the wall. But they're all competitors. And basketball was kind of weird to me. It's either Nike or Converse back then or Reebok. This was all of it. And basically I was told, well, we just tell them, if you want to be here, here's the price. And there's no exclusivity. Everyone has to pay that enormous price. And they couldn't afford not to. And I always thought that was an interesting way of looking at it. But this idea, though, is absolutely genius. It's one price. It goes to the top bidder. Hell, they could do that and do it in a bubble. It could really be safe. Whoever wants to pay for it, you got to get here a few days early. We'll quarantine you. We'll do saliva tests, whatever. And it'll cost you, a cool billion or a cool million, whatever
it is. Yeah.
That's chump money. For $1 million is nothing for them, for some of them.
Nothing.
Of course. All right. Well, thanks a lot, you guys. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, David. Thank you, Jarod.
Be safe, everyone.